You know the voice, don't you? The one that whispers, "You're not good enough," right after a success? Or shouts, "I told you so," after a failure? We all have an inner critic. But have you ever stopped to ask, who is it? Where did it come from? And what if its true purpose isn't to hurt you, but to protect you in a deeply misguided way? Everything you've been told about your inner critic is wrong. You've been told to fight it, to ignore it, to crush it with positive affirmations. This is a battle you will never win. The shocking truth is, your inner critic isn't a monster. It's a terrified part of you, frozen in time, trying to keep you safe using the only strategy it knows. We're about to turn the tables on this inner tyrant, not through force, but through a radical act of compassion, guided by the wisdom of Carl Jung. This video is not a battle plan. It is your ceasefire, a journey into the heart of your psyche to finally understand this relentless inner voice, to learn its secret origin, and to begin the profound work of transforming it from a source of torment into a source of self-awareness. If you are exhausted from the constant war in your own mind, this is your invitation to finally come home and negotiate a peace. It is the ghost at the feast of your own success, the unwelcome guest at every celebration, the voice that holds the scoreboard from the comparison game and finds a way to write fail even next to your greatest victories. This is the inner critic, and its cruelty is matched only by its precision. Have you ever noticed this? The inner critic is rarely louder than in the moments immediately following a success. It waits for your moment of triumph, for the applause to die down, and then it strikes. In the quiet of your own mind, it whispers, "You got lucky. It wasn't that good. They're just being nice. Now you have to do it again, but better, and you won't be able to." It poisons your victories before you have a chance to taste them. It magnifies your defeats until they feel like the final defining truth of who you are. It is the architect of a life where no achievement is ever enough. Let me tell you about Chloe, the nurse we met, a woman who dedicates her life to care. One frantic afternoon in the emergency room, a patient went into cardiac arrest. Chloe acted flawlessly. She was calm, she was precise, she led the team, and she saved the patient's life. Her manager praised her, the doctor on call thanked her. For a fleeting moment, she felt a surge of pride, of competence. But later that night, as she drove home in the silence of her car, the voice came. It didn't shout. It whispered with a chilling calm. "You almost missed the second medication dose. A better nurse would have seen it sooner. You were just lucky he survived." And just like that, the victory of saving a life was transformed into the near failure of almost losing one. The pride evaporated, replaced by a familiar, cold knot of anxiety. This is the critic's signature move. It ensures that the arrival fallacy we spoke of is always in effect. It guarantees that no matter what you achieve, you never truly arrive, because it moves the goalposts relentlessly. It holds up the highlight reels of others from the comparison game and uses them as evidence for your own inadequacy. It is the source of the emptiness, because a life lived under its rule is a life where you are never, ever good enough. The exhaustion from this inner monologue is profound. It leads to procrastination, because why start something if you're only going to be criticized for it? It leads to perfectionism, the impossible attempt to create something so flawless that the critic will finally be silenced, an attempt that always fails. and it leads to an inability to feel genuine pride or satisfaction in your own hard work. You live as a stranger to your own accomplishments. So what do? How do we begin the ceasefire with such a powerful internal tyrant? The first and most important step in this entire journey is a simple act of separation, a radical act of psychological reframing. You must come to understand, in your bones, this one liberating truth. The voice of the inner critic is not you, and it is not the truth. It is a character on your inner stage, a subpersonality, an echo. It may sound like you. It may use your memories and your fears against you, but it is not your core identity. This is the beginning of all true inner work. The moment you can notice the voice and say, the critic is here, you have already created a space of freedom. In that space, you are no longer the voice. You are the one who is listening to the voice. You have moved from being the prisoner to being the witness. This simple shift is the beginning of the end of its tyranny, because the critic's power is not in the volume of its voice. It is in your belief that its voice is reality. The moment you begin to question that belief, the entire structure begins to shake. Let this be your first practice. For the next few days, simply notice. When the voice of self-doubt, of judgment, of harshness arises, do not fight it, do not argue with it. Simply notice it and say to yourself, this is the voice of the critic. This is not me. You are not condoning it. You are identifying it. You are a detective finally getting a clear description of a ghost that has haunted you for years. This is the first step of our peace treaty. But to truly understand this ghost, to truly disarm it, we must go deeper. We must become archaeologists of the soul, because this voice was not born in a vacuum. It has an origin story, a secret history. And it is in that history that we will find the key to its compassion and to our freedom.
To name the critic is to take back your power, but to understand its origin is to begin the work of compassion. And compassion, not combat, is the only path to true inner peace. Your inner critic was not born with you. It was built, piece by piece, echo by echo. It is a psychological ghost assembled from the voices of your past. This is where we move from judging the critic on a scorecard of good or bad to understanding its story within the complex, flowing river of your life. Carl Jung taught that our psyche is profoundly shaped by the archetypes of our childhood, and the inner critic is most often a rogue parental archetype, an internalized echo of a critical parent, a demanding teacher, or a society that told you your worth was conditional. Let's think about Chloe, the nurse. Her critic was relentless about her performance. During our work, she remembered a scene from her childhood. She was 8 years old. She had brought home a report card with 5 A's and 1 B+. She had been so proud, but she remembers the look on her father's face, the slight frown, the quiet sigh, and the words, "A B+ is fine, Chloe, but you're capable of straight A's. You just need to try harder." In that moment, a part of her psyche became frozen in time. The message she internalized was not, "I am loved." It was, "My love is conditional upon my perfection." Her father's voice, his anxiety about success, his well-intentioned push for excellence became a permanent broadcast station in her own mind. Her inner critic was the ghost of her father's expectations. Now, here is the crucial, counterintuitive truth. This voice, this critic, it believes it is helping you. It believes it is protecting you. Its hidden, terrified logic is this: if I criticize you first, before anyone else does, if I point out your flaws before the world can, it won't hurt as much when the real rejection comes. If I keep you small, if I keep you aiming for a rigid, narrow definition of perfection, you will be safe. The inner critic is a misguided protector. It is a terrified bodyguard using the outdated, brutal tactics it learned in your childhood to try to keep you safe in your adulthood. It would rather wound you with 1,000 small cuts from its own sword than risk you being wounded by the world. It is a strategy born of love, but twisted by fear. This is why you can never win a war against it. To fight the critic is to fight a scared 8-year-old part of yourself that is desperately trying to keep you from getting that B+. It's a war against a ghost, a war against your own history. But the story goes even deeper, because the critic does not only guard your past, it also guards your potential. This is where its connection to the shadow becomes profoundly important. The inner critic is the guard at the gate of the shadow. It is the bouncer at the door of your own unlived life. And it screams the loudest precisely when you're about to do something that involves a part of yourself you have exiled, a part that the critic deems unsafe or unacceptable. Let me tell you about Mark, a 52-year-old executive. His inner critic was a tyrant of logic and productivity. For years, he had a secret desire to paint. He had loved it as a young man, but had put it away to pursue a serious career. Every time he would even think about buying a canvas, the voice would attack. You have no talent. You're too old to start. You'll just waste money and make a fool of yourself. Stick to your spreadsheets. Mark's inner artist, his creativity, his playfulness, his capacity for non-productive joy had been exiled into his shadow. And his inner critic was the guard hired by his younger self to make sure that prisoner never escaped. Why? Because in Mark's family, being an artist was seen as being irresponsible, unstable, a failure. The critic was trying to protect him from the shame and rejection he associated with that part of himself. Do you see? The critic's attacks are not random. They are a map. They are a direct pointer to the parts of your soul you have been taught to fear. The critic screams at your vulnerability because it fears you will be seen as weak. It screams at your anger because it fears you will be seen as not nice. It screams at your desire for rest because it fears you will be seen as lazy. It is the warden of a prison you built long ago to house the most vibrant, powerful, and authentic parts of your own being. And the exhaustion you feel is the energy it takes to keep that prison running. So we do not need a bigger sword to fight this warden. We need a key of compassion, a key of understanding. We need to stop shouting back at the guard and start a quiet, courageous dialogue. A dialogue not with a monster, but with a terrified protector frozen in time.
A war against a ghost cannot be won on a battlefield. It must be won at a negotiating table. The goal is not to eliminate the critic. That is an impossible, exhausting task. The goal is to reduce its power, integrate its wisdom, and take back the driver's seat of your own life. This is where we discover that true power is not the ability to silence the inner voices, but the freedom to choose which ones you believe. So how do we begin this profound work of inner diplomacy? We start not with a shout, but with a whisper. The first practice is the simplest, and perhaps the most powerful. It is the art of name and notice. The moment you hear the critical voice, the moment you feel that familiar clench of not good enough, simply pause, take a breath, and say to yourself, internally, "Ah, the critic is here," or "I'm noticing the critic is speaking." This simple act is a revolution. It is the practice of externalization we spoke of earlier. In that moment of naming, you are no longer the critic. You are the one who notices the critic. You create a space, and in that space, the critic's words lose their absolute authority. They are no longer facts. They are simply the opinion of one very loud, very scared character in your inner world. The second practice is the heart of the negotiation. It is a journaling practice called compassionate inquiry. This is where we turn towards the critic, not with a sword, but with a question. Find a quiet space, open a notebook, and write a dialogue with your critic. You can even use your non-dominant hand to write the critic's answers, to access a more primal part of your psyche. Let your conscious self, your wise adult self, ask gentle, curious questions. Questions like, what are you so afraid will happen if I try this? What are you trying to protect me from? What is the worst-case scenario you are imagining? What do you need to hear from me right now to feel safe? And, perhaps the most revealing question of all, how old are you? Let's go back to Chloe, the nurse. When she did this exercise for the first time, she was shocked. She asked her critic what it was so afraid of, and the answer that came out was not the voice of a stern manager. It was the scrawled, panicked handwriting of a child. It wrote, "If you make a mistake, Daddy will be disappointed. He won't be proud. He might not love us." She asked it how old it was. The answer came back instantly, 8. In that moment, everything changed for Chloe. Her inner tyrant was not a monster. It was a terrified 8-year-old girl, frozen in time, still trying to earn her father's unconditional love by being perfect. She was not at war with the critic. She was at war with the ghost of her own childhood wound. And you cannot fight an 8-year-old into submission. You can only meet her with the compassion and reassurance she never received. This is the power of the dialogue. It unmasks the critic. It reveals its scared, often childlike nature. It reveals its hidden, positive intention, however distorted. And it allows you, the wise adult, to step in and reparent this frightened part of yourself. To say, I hear you. I understand why you're scared, but I am an adult now. I can handle a B+. I can handle making a mistake. I will keep us safe. The final practice is about cultivating a new voice. If the critic has been the dominant voice for so long, we need to consciously amplify a different one. This is the practice of invoking the inner mentor. Your psyche does not only contain a critic, it also contains the archetypes of the wise old woman, the sage, the good parent, a compassionate, centered, wise part of you. It may be quiet, it may be underdeveloped, but it is there, and we can give it a voice. Think of a person, real or fictional, who embodies the kind of wisdom and kindness you needed to hear as a child. Maybe it's a grandparent, a beloved character from a book, a spiritual teacher. And in a moment of self-doubt, after you have noticed the critic, consciously ask yourself, what would my inner mentor say to me right now? What would that wise, loving presence offer? It might be a simple phrase. This is difficult. Be gentle with yourself. Or, your worth is not in the outcome. Or, you are learning, and that is enough.
By consciously practicing this, you are not just fighting the critic. You are building a new neural pathway. You are turning up the volume on the voice of your own inner wisdom. You are creating a council of elders in your own soul to act as a counterbalance to the frightened child with the loud voice. This is the journey. Not a war of extermination, but a slow, patient process of building an inner democracy. A process of bringing all the parts of you out of the shadows and into the light of your own compassionate awareness.
Life, then, becomes less of a battlefield and more of a sanctuary. The goal was never silence. The roaring monologue of judgment that once consumed your every waking moment begins to lose its power. Not because you have vanquished it, but because you have understood it. It is no longer the tyrant in the driver's seat. It is a passenger, a noisy, anxious passenger perhaps, but a passenger whose fear you have learned to hear without having to obey its directions. You have taken the wheel. This is the freedom that comes not from positive thinking, but from deep, compassionate listening. This is the heart of the inner work we're doing together. The slow, courageous turning from the outer world of judgment to the inner world of understanding. And what does a life with a disarmed critic look like? It doesn't vanish. The echoes may always remain. But its voice becomes a quiet, distant whisper, rather than a deafening roar. You become more resilient, because when you stumble, the voice is no longer a confirmation of your failure, but a quiet signal of a past wound that needs your attention. You meet your setbacks not with harshness, but with kindness. You find the courage to take creative risks, the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to be beautifully, imperfectly human, because the fear of the critic's punishment no longer holds you hostage. And most importantly, you learn to be a friend to yourself. You begin to offer yourself the same grace and understanding that you so freely give to others. The war against yourself is over. And in the quiet that follows, you can finally begin to hear the other, wiser voices of your own soul. This is not the end of the work. It is the end of the war. And it is the beginning of a life lived from a place of inner peace. So I invite you to one final act of inner diplomacy for our time together. The next time you hear your inner critic's voice, don't argue with it. Pause, take a breath, and gently ask it one question. What are you so afraid of right now? Listen for the answer beneath the criticism, beneath the anger, beneath the judgment. Listen for the fear. This simple, compassionate question is the beginning of true inner peace. But this raises a deeper question. This constant feeling of not good enough that the critic feeds on, this relentless inner pressure to be more, achieve more, and acquire more, where does this insatiable hunger come from? This feeling that you are never quite there, that you never have enough, is the fuel that keeps the critic's fire burning. In our next journey together, we will turn to face this great modern hunger, the myth of never enough, and we will learn its true name.